Welcome.
Wel-
We're live, so go ahead. That was fun. Go ahead.
Welcome to the Parker Daniels Show, where we make changes, no excuses. Hi, my name is Nicole. I'm the co host of this show and also the founder of Rose Colored Glasses. And I'd like to bring the brains, the bronze, and the founder of the Parker Daniels Show, Anthony.
Okay. Um, I want to first of all thank my lovely co-host for being my sidekick, handling my business, keeping me straightforward and everything. And today we have a very serious topic. I was a victim of guardian abuse, and that's the title. And we're going to be talking with a young lady named by the name of Beth, and she's going to be giving you some interesting situations that occurred in her life. And I hope you enjoy it because this topic, basically touches to home. I'm not going to go into detail as to why, but I'm going to let my co-host really delve into the topic and get the information that's prevalent and we all can definitely relate to. But without further ado, I would like for you all to continue to subscribe, hit that like button, notification bell, and continue to support the Parker Daniels Show. Also, there are going to be some giveaways at the end of the show. So I want you all to stick around for that as well. So without further ado, I'm going to sit back and let my co-host handle her business, do what she does best, and interview our guest, Beth.
Hi, Beth. How are you this afternoon?
I'm doing good this afternoon, Nicole. How about you?
Very good. I want you to give our viewing and listening audience a little brief background about you and your site, and we will go from there.
Okay. So, you guys introduced me, but I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself for the audience. My name is Beth Tarasi, and I am blind ever since birth. I have never seen anything in my life. I don't even have light perception. So, don't trust me with the light switches, people. Um, I do not read print. I have always been a Braille bug. I love Braille. And don't get me started on why I love Braille. Braille is so wonderful. Excuse me, that car out the window. It's a hot day today, so the windows are all open. But I have lived in Florida for 23 years, up until 2010 when I flew to Colorado to begin my independence training. But I'm about to talk about part of what happened with the independence training in Colorado and why I went to begin with. And part of it will have you guys on the edge of your seats. So, yeah.
So, let's give a little background about you growing up in Florida. Let's start from an age where you could really understand. So, let's start from there, talking about the things that were happening to you as a blind person or blind individual.
Well, I think when I was old enough to understand, I think my mom, she might have resented me because of how I was born. And I was born out of wedlock. And then 2 years later, I was told. And this is something that I was told when I was old enough to understand. The man who became known as, the man I shared the surname with, David Tarasi, adopted me at the age of 2. Later, I had 2 brothers brought into the family. There was the addition of 2 brothers, and I had to learn to get along with these 2. They were sighted. None of them were blind. I am the only blind person in my entire lineage. So, like, if you looked at a family tree, there's just no mention of a blind person for as far back as I can remember. My aunt was able to trace it as far back as Charlemagne. Just a fun fact right there. But It's kind of a long trace back, but okay. But
for our viewers, why don't you give us a bit of, because Charlemagne is actually in our history books. So why don't you give them a quick fun fact?
Sure. Charlemagne, well, his name means Charles the Great, but he was one of those ancient Renaissance / Holy Roman kings. And my Aunt Catherine Clay, or Catherine something, I don't even know what her last name is anymore because she got divorced and then she must have kept the last name, but I just call her Aunt Kathy. But she was able to trace my lineage of the family as far back as the Holy Roman Empire. And I don't know how my aunt managed to do that, but there's just no mention of a blind person as far back as I can remember. But a fun fact, that's my fun fact of the day. Yeah.
Okay, so moving forward.
Okay.
How did it make you feel to know that your mother resented you because of your blindness?
Well, I really didn't understand about it until my mother started swatting me too many times to count. She would even resent me for being the center of attention or even having something higher than the boys, the legitimate sons of David, if I may call them that.
Okay.
Danny and Tommy were sighted, so they got to do sports, they got trophies, and of course, later in life, they ended up working and becoming engineers. But as far back as I can remember, I realized I was different, that I could not see things, that I had to feel everything. But my mom didn't even want me cooking in the kitchen. I think mom and dad made up the whole assumption that I had no desire to cook or clean. I did have a desire to live on my own, but I didn't want to have to worry about someone rushing me in the kitchen. And I certainly did not like the fact that I could not cook my own recipes. My family was a very picky sort of group of people. They would not eat anything but anything with carbs, like pasta, potatoes, steak. So I didn't have room to be creative in the kitchen, but that's just one thing.
Okay.
The other thing I wasn't able to do was finish up piano lessons and go into piano recitals. I talked about a little bit where I went to school earlier when I got acclimated with Nicole.
Right.
Basically, I never went to a blind school, which might have helped and might not have helped. I don't know exactly if the blind school thing would have been good, but Florida's School for the Deaf and Blind in St. Augustine had some pretty juicy things going on when I was very young. And I didn't know about this until I was in Tom Anderson's Braille class many years later. But maybe it was a good thing my parents didn't send me there because there was just too much going on at that school.
So my question to you is, being a blind person, how were you able to learn things like mobility? How were you able to get from class to class? What was it like being a totally blind kid in a sighted school setting? It could not have been easy.
No, it was not easy at all. In fact, I felt like the pull-out sessions were not really a good idea. In fact, the pull-outs stopped in high school. I ended up having to learn how to get from class to class in the younger years, but I was pulled out of class where I should have been learning how to read, write, reading, writing, arithmetic, the way sighted kids do. And I was pulled out of those classes. My mom didn't want me to have any pull-out sessions if she had it her way. But as a blind person, I was not given enough advanced getting from class to class time, especially in the kindergarten years. I was not mainstreamed actually until the third grade. And by then I was in a neighborhood school. So I had to learn how to walk from my house down a bike path flooded with mosquitoes, if I may say so. And it was like sort of in the woods between my house and the school. Once I got to the school, Then I had to learn how to walk around the campus, like class to class. I didn't have that very good of a mobility instructor at that time, so yeah.
So did you use a cane or?
I used a cane.
Okay.
I used a cane.
Okay.
And that was the other thing. My mom was more about using the cane than my dad, I think.
Okay.
But it was like, I don't think my parents were all for me using a cane at one time. People actually have this misconception about the cane being used as a weapon. I'm sure you might have seen that in an earlier
Yes.
episode, Cane versus Guide Dog. And I need to look at that one anyway. But there's this misconception about canes being used as weapons. And I fell into that misconception at one time. But I didn't think that was a very good thing either, because if I wasn't using my cane, I had to depend on other people. And that was wrong. I think that the best part about using a cane is you have, and I have a very long cane. It goes all the way up to my nose now, but there was a time I had one that went up to my sternum, like right up my abdomen.
Right.
And I basically had to learn how to walk around with that cane. But the longer the cane, my teacher told me, the better the reaction time you have, especially if you run into an obstacle. Like we have a ton of obstacles outside our apartment right now. I would have plenty of time to decide, do I go this way or do I go the other way? Do I go right? Do I go left? I would have plenty more time to make that decision. So, yeah.
Okay. So one of the things that I'd like to bring out,
Yes.
and I will be doing a video on this. It's blind shaming.
Yes.
A lot of people do not understand. And I think one of the things that I'd like to put out there, as parents, it is your responsibility, if you have a child with a disability, to support them. Stop making them feel that they are a burden or you're ashamed of them because of their disability.
Yes.
That is a real pet peeve of mine, even though I have not been blind very long. But when I hear stories like this, it really, I'm going to just say it for what it is. It pisses me off, because the last thing that a blind person needs is someone to shame them for being who they are. And with that being said, we're going to fast forward to the story from your elementary years to your senior high years. How was that like for you?
I couldn't go to my prom. I had to miss out on 2 homecomings. But my senior year, my parents decided we're getting guardianship, and this is where the road turns for the worst. My parents were ashamed of my blindness because I was sitting in the attorney's office and I plainly heard, our daughter is totally blind, but they also made up some things about me having severe emotional handicaps. But what really happened was they covered up years of verbal, emotional, social abuse. And I think they were preparing me for a life of being less than instead of, and it's the goal of parenting, as you said, is to support your offspring. But I want to add something else.
Please do.
The goal of parenting is to let the child go out into the big wide world. It is like that with all kinds of animals as well. When the bird in the nest, for instance, learns to fly, it is time for the mother bird to say, okay, baby bird, you go off and make yourself a nest and get a mate and make more birds, you know? It's like that with all animals. It's like that with all humans. Even when humans have disabilities, even when animals, well, animals might be a bit different because some of the disabilities animals might end up with, that could impede them from basically feeding and hunting and foraging, because most animals do that. But I mean, it's just an analogy that I use quite often to say that the goal of parenting is to let go of your child and let the child go and grow up.
But then be there for them if they
Yeah.
make mistakes. That is a
Exactly.
job of a parent. And
Right.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
So concerning the guardianship,
Uh-huh.
here is where I need to put out a disclosure.
Uh-huh.
Disclosure: if you have any young children in the audience that you do not want to hear this story because of the fact that we will be touching some very difficult topics, please ask them to leave the room now, because some of these topics will touch your heart. It will make you cry. But in saying this, Beth will tell you how she overcame it and how the struggles and the things that she has gone through has helped her become the woman she is today. So, Beth, with that being said, let's talk about the process of guardianship and how that affects a person's life.
Well, okay. So thank you for the disclosure and thank you again for everything.
You're welcome.
Basically, what happened with the guardianship process was you have to have a darn good reason to get the guardianship in the first place, whether the person is on palliative care or hospice, severe Alzheimer's, advanced dementia, blah, blah, blah. But blindness is not a good reason to have the guardianship. But the guardianship was brought about because my parents wanted to get a restraining order against a guy that they thought was going to have intimacies with me at the wrong age. He was 51, I was 17 at the time, and my parents over freaked out, were very overprotective, and they were like, oh, we don't want Rico having anything to do with her. They wanted to choose my friends. So, and they also said that I should not be able to get married. And when I did ask about getting married, they mocked me for it. And
so, can I bring you back a little bit?
Go for it.
What was the situation that made them feel like a 51-year-old would take advantage of a 17-year-old? Because here we are in a society today where the whole Me Too movement, we're in, you know, empower the woman, empower. But I think sometimes a lot of people take it way too far. A lot of times, and I'm going to say this as a female, a lot of times there are good men and good people in the world, and they see someone and they want to help them through it. It's not always, oh, I'm trying to, get her in bed, or I'm trying to prey on her, or I'm trying to groom, as people say. What was it that made your parents jump to this conclusion?
I think it was mainly the fact that Rico was 51 years old.
Okay.
The fact that he was even associated with me, and the fact that my parents, they thought they knew about the grooming, as it were. This happens a lot with young girls with developmental disabilities as well. But what the responses that parents have to these situations is not warranted. For example, my parents said they wanted a restraining order, but there had been no sexual contact between me and the guy, so they couldn't prove it. They couldn't prove that he did something wrong. And I looked up the record of the restraining order online. The judge dismissed the restraining order on the basis of the burden of proof. So my parents wanted to put a burden of proof between me, and it wasn't just Rico, it was everyone. They tried to stoke fear in me by saying, oh, guys will take advantage of you. This will take advantage of you. That person will take advantage of you. And they did it to the point where
it was like brainwashing. They were trying to brainwash you into thinking that no one can take care of you, no one can do anything for you but us.
Right. Yes, that's kind of what was going on. That's kind of how I feel about it.
Okay, so tell us a little bit more of how you wound up getting the courage to overcome your guardianship? What gave you the courage to want to get out of a situation like this?
Well, I didn't know this at the time, but honestly, I don't know what my parents would have done had they, well, suppose they died before I was able to go to Colorado. I realized I would have probably been locked up in some group home. And there are people with disabilities who live in these homes. And I feel kind of bad because those homes are very regimented. They have rules. You can't really visit very much people in group homes except family. There are some homes that don't let you do anything. And there's too many protocols and stuff. I've seen it all. But what got me the courage was, oddly enough and ironically enough, it was a guy from the NFB who was also connected with some of my college friends. He told me, well, Beth, you have low self-esteem. You have low confidence. Well, that was a duh moment for me. And I said, okay, what do I do then? And Carlos Montes, thank God for him. He was a godsend. He basically said, okay, Beth, why don't you pick a place to go to, out of state? And my parents at first said, oh, Louisiana, go to Ruston. But I probably should have told them that Ruston, Louisiana does not have the healthcare access to things like Title 10, which provides women with contraceptives, birth controls, and such. And I needed to have that in order to really keep myself from doing anything else. And I didn't want to get pregnant too early. And Ruston, Louisiana would not have had the counseling that I needed because the guardianship was so traumatic. I have to go to therapy every so often. And I didn't think that Louisiana would have had the therapeutic services necessary. And the state itself would have not provided enough of it anyway. Their Medicaids, usually in the South, the Medicaids aren't as good. It's a red state there too, no offense, but Louisiana also operates on Napoleonic law, and I studied all of it, and I said, I want to go to Colorado. I chose Colorado because A, the winters are a bit milder than Minnesota, and Minnesota has the blind ink, but Minnesota, oh, it's cold. Like negative 50 degrees outside, if I may exaggerate. But I chose Colorado Center for the Blind because it had a pretty laid-back staff. They were willing to accommodate the fact that I needed counseling, and they did have a counselor who came to talk adjustment and other things on site. They gave me a scholarship. Then I applied for Medicaid, and Colorado Medicaid, compared to other places that I could have been at, is so much better. It depends on where you go and what you do and everything, but Colorado has some very good health care and very good things that I can take advantage of.
I'd like to again
Yeah.
interject.
That's fine.
The fact that therapy is very important.
Yes.
Don't ever let anyone, and this is for our viewing audience and listening audience, don't let anyone make you feel like therapy is not, is you're going crazy town. No. As blind people, as visually impaired people, we go through a lot more than what people realize. And the fact that this school recognized that you needed that and provided not only a therapist that could deal with your real life issues, but also help you cope with being blind as well. So continue, because I'd like to hear more about Colorado.
Great. Well, Colorado is a beautiful state. We've got mountains, we've got foothills, I've had so much fun here in Colorado. But there was a time that I dated a Muslim guy, so I explored Islam here in Colorado. Okay. I got things that I would never have gotten in any other state, or if I had chosen a different state, it might have been different. But I think I experienced everything from being a Muslim to being profiled for being a Muslim by a rehab doc, And that's a different story for a different day. But rehab systems in Colorado at the time, they sent me, I'll just briefly summarize, but they sent me to this doctor to evaluate me for going to college and all this. And he basically made some very inappropriate statements about the veil I was wearing and everything. And there are Muslims who are blind who are much better Muslims than I would have been. And I would probably recommend that for another episode, but okay. But that's basically the summary of what happened here. But I ended up moving into an apartment on my own in about 2012. And I felt isolated living alone because I was isolated in Florida. When I realized what my parents were doing, I was looking at things like the National Association to Stop Guardian Abuse. I later contacted someone from Face Us, which stands for, Families Against Court Embezzlement Unethical Standards. It's a Colorado-based anti-guardianship organization that works to end the abuse and use of the for-profit guardian system to hold families hostage and steal their money. And I realized that if my parents had kept the guardianship beyond a certain time, well, we all know that we're all going to die. Everybody dies. Correct. And if my parents end up 6 feet under and dead, what will happen to me? According to state law, it depends on how you do it, but there's that will and testament that my parents might have ended up doing. I didn't want to be an heirloom to the boys, my parents' legitimate children. And my brother, he got married so he could have his own children, and I don't want him to have anything to do with a weird old aunt, so to speak. But I ended up having to make some phone calls, write letters, but no organization wanted to take my case. No organization wanted to help end the guardianship, not even the American Civil Liberties Union. And I had an ex-boyfriend pretty much accuse me of pushing the issues of marriage and so on. But the problem was I wanted to have something that the parents would not allow. And the guardianship was not a full guardianship, mind you, but it was enough so that I could not get married. I could not choose my residence. I could not choose my friends. I could not choose anything that I wanted to do with my life without the parents hovering over it. But when I got to Colorado and I started seeing doctors here, there were still some problems. I keep thinking to myself, what will happen if my parents are still on those medical charts? Funny thing is, I got a call several weeks ago. My doctor, my psychiatrist here in Colorado called me several weeks ago and said, your father wants me to say that you don't need a guardian. And I guess it was my parents because they'd had enough of not hearing from me. And honestly, I guess they've had enough of having guardianship because they realized, maybe they did realize it was a huge responsibility and stuff. And guardianships are such a huge thing. In Florida, there was a recent article I shared with Anthony about guardians. Guardians can determine everything from where you live to whether you get an amputation to whether the dog gets put down. And that's big. It's a huge responsibility. And I don't think my parents were equipped for that, but they also wanted the doctor to prove that I needed no assistance from a guardian. The doctor, I assume, filled out the form, but I'm pretty sure they're going to have to terminate the guardianship anyway, because the thing that I worry about most of all is if my parents found out that I was pregnant, or if I wanted to have a child, if I wanted to buy a house, I think the guardianship might have ruined that too. And it also ruined my chances of having good credit, which is a financial topic you can get into later.
Okay. So, as we were talking on the phone earlier,
yes. Uh-huh.
You mentioned that you are now married. How did that come about?
I'm not actually married yet.
Okay.
Sorry, I should have clarified, but I am engaged to be married to a loving guy. His name is Trenton. He is a great guy. Treats me like a queen. I met this guy on Twitter, but I had also heard his name before from another woman that a lot of us might know. I'm not sure if anyone in the audience might
No
know.
names. No names.
Okay,
Okay.
but I did hear from that other lady about the about my current man. But he
Okay.
is a sweetheart. He's a real sweetheart. I met him on Twitter, and he's a great guy.
So, have you found out any more concerning the guardianship, whether it is null and void now, so you can continue on with your life?
I think, well, I've heard the doctor say that the guardianship would be null and void here in Colorado anyway, but what bothers me is that Florida courts might subpoena the doctor for details about how I can live with a null and void guardianship in Colorado while there's a guardianship in Florida. Had I lived in Florida, the doctors would not have been able to help with things like, oh, anything from a normal checkup to a pregnancy. It would have all been like, do you have your parents' permission? Do your parents know about this? Blah, blah, blah. I didn't want that. And as a patient in Colorado's healthcare system, now I feel like I can do just about anything. I think I can move on with my life, but because the guardianship was in place, I don't think I'm going to be able to find a job. And it's going to be very hard to move forward because the guardianship was in place for 15 years. 15 years.
And how old are you now?
32.
32. Okay, so I would like to come back and do a follow-up story, especially when you decide, because you're engaged now, when you decide that you are going to be married. I would like to do kind of like a follow-up story to see how that guardianship is no more, because is there a way that you can file as an indigent adult in Colorado or even Florida, now that you have proven that you can live on your own, you have proven that you are independent, you have proven that you are capable of making life choices and paying bills?
The funny thing is, I already collect benefits here in Colorado, and I already collect Social Security and all that stuff. And I have my own apartment. I pay my own rent. I pay the bills. I buy food, supplies, and all that yada yada. But I don't want to move back to Florida ever because Florida's healthcare system is broken, just like everywhere else. But I think Florida's healthcare system is even more broken than in most places because I want to be able to make choices related to things like pregnancy, having a child, taking care of child, getting house for child. And all those life choices are going to be very hard to make if I can't earn the recommended amount of money for that. Okay. And I think the guardianship kind of stole that already. So I'm trying to think of some way. I'm already in touch with some financiers in Colorado to try to get us a better housing, because right now we live in a low-income subsidized apartment.
Okay.
And they may be a little bit touchy as far as family structure and all that kind of stuff, because it's a senior disabled living area. So
right. So Beth, I'm really appreciative of you coming in and sharing your story.
Yes.
And like I said, I'd really like to do a follow-up because viewing audience, these things are out here. These are some of the situations and circumstances that we as blind people deal with on a continuous basis. And we fight for our independence. We fight for our right as to even be a human and not be treated like second-class citizens. So with that being said, Beth, do you have any encouraging words for our viewing and listening audience out there?
I think the best word of encouragement that I'd like to put out there is, especially for the parents of blind kids, even kids with multiple disabilities have potential. The thing you can do for these people is to recognize that every choice you make as a parent will affect that person far down the road. If you make the right choices, your child will thank you. By the same token, if you make the wrong choices, your child will not thank you. So I encourage parents to make the right choices and think about, what do you want 15 or 20 years down the road from your child, for yourself and for your other half, if you have one, or other people in the family? Do you want your child to resent the family, or do you want to have a relationship with the child and the grandchildren and everything like that? If you cannot think of any other way to, it doesn't matter about the child's behavioral difficulties. You've got to work with the disabilities. And the other thing is, as a parent of a blind or disabled child, again, let that child make the decision with you. Don't force anything on your child, including guardianship, including life in a supported living environment they may not like. That's my encouraging word for you guys.
Thank you, Beth. I really appreciate you coming on the show. Also, before we leave, Anthony, if you would step back in.
I'm here.
We have some giveaways. Would you like to tell our audience about the giveaways?
Yes, I've been trying to plan to do this for a long time, and I never got a chance to do so. And I feel, and I also felt that this is the most appropriate time to do it by us going live and having something that's very important to us as blind people, and as sometimes sighted people may fall into the situation where they may have individuals take over their livelihood, quote unquote, and try to not do the right thing. And there are some people who are guardians who do the right thing, but this is a situation where this was not the case. And I'm glad to have Beth on here to share her story, and to have you, Nicole. I want to say thank you for actually doing what you do in order to bring out the best in people. And you've been getting a lot of compliments, and I appreciate that. So nevertheless, I want to say thank you. And Beth, you can stick around if you want to. I have some items. I'm going to try to show them on camera, but I have a whole bunch of names. Let me get them in the bag. And I'm going to pull these from people who commented on videos and things of that nature. So I'm going to reach in the bag and pull out each one and read the names. And then later on, we'll contact these individuals to let them know that they have been chosen to receive a gift, and we're going to follow up with them and get the information that we need in order to send it to them. So with that being said, the first name that I'm going to pull out the bag, I'm shaking it up, and I'm going to pull out, dig deep in here. First name that we have, it's in Braille, y'all, so I'm going to put it on, is a lady by the name of Kim Lackey. She commented.
Kim Lackey, congratulations.
Yay.
All right.
Hit us up on the DM, and Anthony will make sure he gets your address so you can get your gift. Okay. Thank you for participating in our show. All right.
All right. The next one we have here, Nikki, is, let me turn it around the right way. Okay, let me see. These, oh my God. I'm sorry, when I clicked off the name, let me put this, I'm gonna get another one. Half of the name was clicked off, so let me pull another name out of here. And that one is Tyrone Thomas. He's always commenting on a lot of our videos.
All right, Tyrone Thomas.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
In the DM, in the Parker Slash Daniel show.
Okay.
Come claim your prize.
Okay. I have 10.
I have watching the show.
I got 10 of them, so I'm down down to 8 more left. The next name we're going to pull out here, Nikki, is Blind Shooter. He comments on a lot of our videos as well.
All right,
Blind Shooter.
Hit us up in the DM.
Okay. I'm kind of trying to pull somebody that y'all heard of, Nikki. The next name we have here is Miss Kathy. She's she as a matter of fact, Nicole, she's one of your favorite fans. She compliments on a lot of things. Whenever you do shows and stuff, she compliments on a lot of things that you do. I've known her from high school. She's an art teacher. So Miss Kathy, she's been on here also a long time ago. So Miss Kathy, definitely we appreciate your support.
Yes.
The next one is a young lady by the name of Brandy Ray. She also is a commenter on the show. Brandy Ray.
All right, Brandy. Thanks for watching. Keep us coming with those comments, guys.
Okay, there's 5, Nicole. We got 5 more to do. The next one we have in this bag here is, let me turn it the right way. Oh God. Oh, let's see. ESOT, esoteric quality.
Esoteric quality.
Okay. All right. Number 6. 4 more left. Dig deep in the bag. Oh, man, we definitely appreciate it, y'all. The next name we have here is Simply Lise. Simply Lise, I hope I got a L-I-S. Simply Lise. I'll be able to find her.
Simply Lise. All right. Hit us up in the DM so you can claim your prize. Thank you for subscribing to the Parker Daniels Show.
And the next, thanks, Blind Illustration. Blind Illustration.
Thank you. Hit us up in the DM so we can get your contact information and send you your prize.
4, 5, 6, 7. We have 3 more left to go, Nick.
There we go.
Okay. The name, Angelito Fernandez. He was one of the ones that
Fernandez.
Down to number 8.
Hit us up in the DM. Make sure that you message guys for all of you who won your prizes so we can get your contact information and have your prizes sent to you as soon as quickly as possible.
Okay, and the next one, and people are gonna think that I was cheating, but I had dug deeply in the bag and pulled out my son, Xavier Parker. He was on here back.
Parker.
Oh,
that is so cute.
Okay, how many? Oh, one. We have one more.
One more left.
Okay. The next one is turning around the right way. Oh my God, she's blind.
Kenyatta. Woo-hoo.
All right.
Right, y'all go check her YouTube page out. That is a beautiful, dynamic woman. She knows her stuff. She is very confident and powerful. Kenyatta, come do your thing, babe. Hit us up in the DM.
Thanks a lot. And also check out, let's give some shout outs while we're on here. Zephyrin, he's a comedian. Hit me out, Nicole, because you know I'm getting older. So.
Okay, so y'all, before we leave out, I want you guys to check out She's Blind with Kenyatta. Check out and subscribe to her YouTube channel. We have comedian See No Evil. He also has a YouTube channel where he brings you comedy and gaming. Also, check me out on my platform that is starting up, Tales from the Cookie Jar. And once again, Beth,
thank you.
I want to say thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. Like I said, we will be contacting you back to do a follow-up because I want to hear that you have
everything's up.
Life. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I think we're getting married next spring. As a matter of fact, we're going to do a commitment ceremony sometime in like March or April of next year. We don't know, or May or something.
Wow. So we probably will do something about you know, what it's like to have the jitters, first blind jitters. How do you feel as a blind person getting, you know, doing a commitment ceremony? For those of you who do not know what a commitment ceremony is, it's where both of you commit to spend a lifetime with each other. A lot of times people have to do this because of financial reasons and or
Right.
reasons of where they just cannot be married due to government law.
Oh, really?
Yes.
It does.
Yes.
It does. Does that apply to like the I mean, not United States, Louisiana, or just in certain states? I never heard of it.
It requires in a lot of government law, especially when it comes down to people who are disability and receiving
Oh, wow.
government
SSI.
benefits.
Yeah.
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 Okay, I didn't know that. Girl, you teach me. That's why, girl, that's why I got you, because I didn't even know anything of that magnitude. But
Yeah.
anything else? Anything else I want to say while we're still alive?
Again, I want to thank Beth. Beth, like I said, we are coming to check you out again. There may
Definitely.
be another topic that you want to really share with the audience, so you make sure you get up with Anthony or myself, and let us know, hey, I want to talk about this. Also, before I leave, guys, I want to say thank you for subscribing, supporting the Parker Daniels Show. I am so thrilled that you guys have really shared these videos, come out and commented. A lot of people we have touched, and we would like to continue to touch and change people's lives. Our motto is, as always, we make changes and no excuses. So hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that notification bell, hit all notifications so you can see when we go live or when we're uploading videos. And as always, I like to thank you guys for everything that you do. So this is Nicole, the co-host of the Parker Daniels Show, saying peace, love, and God bless you.
Thank you.